You may have heard that applying to law school is largely a numbers game determined by your LSAT score and your GPA, and yes, that is true. So the question arises, what happens if your numbers don't fit the mold? If you are a so-called splitter applicant, someone with a high LSAT score but a low GPA, this video is for you. Today, I'll share some steps and strategies for you to succeed as a splitter applicant, even at top law schools. First, for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Now, first, let's define what it means to be a splitter. Simply put, it's when your LSAT score is significantly above your target law school's median, but your GPA falls below it. So, for example, you might have a 175 LSAT score paired with only a 3.0 GPA. And of course, these numbers might seem at odds, but you would be surprised at how law schools view these kinds of applications. It's not an automatic rejection, and in fact, it can be a whole lot better to apply with a higher LSAT and a low GPA than with a high GPA and a low LSAT, and here's why. High LSAT scores matter so much because law schools care a great deal about their medians, and your LSAT score has a heavier weight in the US News Law School rankings than your GPA does. And so law schools are first and foremost incentivized to boost their LSAT medians more so than their GPA medians. So an LSAT score of a 175 can significantly more than balance out a relatively lower GPA. And so if you are a splitter applicant, think of a high LSAT score as your ticket into the conversation. So aim for a score as high as possible. And it's definitely worth retaking if you need to, because law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take the highest score. So really, there's no downside to retaking. If you could do even a few points better on a retake, it's well worth the effort. Now, of course, you may still be stressed about having a lower GPA on record, but context is important. Law schools know that not all GPAs are created equal. Of course, a 3.2 in mechanical engineering is going to carry a lot more weight than a 3.7 in a less rigorous field that has a bit more grade inflation. And of course, if your lower GPA was due to external factors like working full time, family obligations, a family emergency, or some sort of other unique situation, consider writing an addendum to explain away the lower GPA. If you do, make sure you keep it concise and don't excuse, but rather explain. Focus on taking accountability for your actions and show how you've grown since that situation. And of course, you can say, hey, although I have a lower GPA, my higher LSAT demonstrates my potential to succeed in law school. And so make sure that you craft a strong narrative in your law school applications, because of course, numbers don't tell the whole story. This is where your personal statement and optional essays come in. Make sure you highlight achievements that showcase your discipline, resilience, or other unique experiences that you've had. For example, I had one student who had only a 3.1 GPA, but she was still able to stand out in her applications because she spent 3 years working as a paralegal, which of course admittedly is not that unique, but she had killer recommendation letters, and she wrote a compelling essay about her experience working with underserved communities. And so if you can show law schools why you bring something special to the class, that can help make the difference in getting in, even when your numbers are not entirely up to par. And so I'm now going to share with you 4 strategies to apply as a splitter for your law school application game plan. If your numbers aren't above both the LSAT and the GPA of the schools you're targeting to, apply broadly. Don't limit yourself to a narrow list of schools. Some schools are going to be more splitter friendly than others, but these can change year by year. Secondly, leverage data. Use platforms like LSD.law to help you identify schools where your profile might have a competitive edge, where you might stand out based on your numbers or other characteristics. Number 3, don't be afraid to apply relatively later in the cycle if you need that time to get a higher LSAT score or put together stronger application essays. Of course, all else being equal, it's better to apply earlier than later, but you can more than make up for applying a month or two later in the cycle if you can get your LSAT score up by even a couple of points. And finally, consider scholarships. Compare your financial aid packages carefully. It's oftentimes better to apply to a lower ranked law school with more scholarship money than a higher ranked school with less scholarship money. So try to avoid that debt if and when you can. Don't always go for prestige or reputation over the financial aid package that you can get, because law school debt typically is not forgivable, and getting a higher LSAT score can help you get significant scholarship offers, possibly even a full ride. Now, I know you may be worried about being penalized for past mistakes like having a lower GPA or an academic violation of some kind. And while this can be a hurdle to getting in, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. If your transcript has a particularly low point, like a semester with a 1.8 GPA, explain it in an addendum if you feel you need to, but don't overly dwell on it, especially if you can show an upward trend on your transcript and you have more recent achievements you can highlight. That can more than make up for an off semester here or there, especially if you have strong work experience or can showcase professional growth in some other area. And finally, remember that being a splitter applicant doesn't necessarily make you a weaker applicant. In fact, it's far better to be a splitter, meaning you have a high LSAT than a low GPA, than vice versa, having a lower LSAT score with a higher GPA. Law schools do value your experience, whether it's work experience or otherwise. And if you are still not yet done with the LSAT, put all your efforts into maximizing your LSAT score, because that's going to be the biggest factor in the admissions process. And of course, if you'd like my help, getting students the highest LSAT score possible is exactly what we do at LSAT Unplugged through our live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. You can check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And in the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.